Welcome to Vision Pros, the show all about spatial computing, visionOS, and getting work done on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm Tim Chatton, host of the show.
My Apple Watch was charging when I took those screenshots. So there's one shot where you can actually see the tan line from my Apple Watch, and it's pretty bad if you go back and find it. But so far, no one said anything, so maybe it wasn't too noticeable.
Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Vision Pros. With the release of visionOS 2, I'm really excited to welcome back to the podcast Devon Dundee, who's just on episode 21 of this show. Devon was the reviewer for visionOS 2 for MacStories. Make sure to check out his very in-depth review of visionOS that we will be diving into in this episode. So head on over to MacStories.net to read the visionOS 2 review by Devon Dundee. As a reminder, you can support this podcast over visionpros.fm/Patreon. And by subscribing to either the Patreon or an Apple Podcast, you'll get early access to both Vision Pros and iPad Pros. My great thanks to everyone that supports the show. And as a reminder, if you have not yet reviewed this podcast on Apple Podcasts, that too would be greatly appreciated. Every review goes a long way in helping to send the right signals to Apple to show this podcast more in search. With that, here's my discussion all about visionOS 2 with Devon Dundee. Enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast, Devon.
Hey, Tim. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm excited for this chat. visionOS 2 is out, and you did the definitive review over at MacStories, and congrats on your first review over there and getting that out the door. That's a big undertaking.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think when I accepted the assignment, I didn't know exactly what to expect. It was quite an undertaking, but it was an awesome process, and just living with the OS, but then also getting to think about it and write about it. It was really, really cool, and happy that I got to do it, and really happy with the positive feedback I've gotten on it so far.
So what was your process like? Like, how did you, gather your research after using it day in and day out? And, when did you kind of get the narrative you wanted to kind of craft for the review?
Yeah, it's not the most exciting process, but for the most part, I lived with it for the summer, just, picking up little things here and there. If I thought of something that was worth remembering, I'd jot it down in Apple Notes. I just had a little folder of notes there. And then as it got closer and I felt like I needed to start the writing process, I just made an outline and thought, okay, so let's think about the concepts for this and kind of group things together and see how this can flow. And so once I had that outline, then I really went back through the OS deeply and dug into every little, nook and cranny, made sure I didn't miss any toggles and settings, because that's always where the fun stuff is, right?
It is indeed, yeah.
And so checked all of that, filled in the outline, and then I basically just took that outline and started writing, had my writing next to the outline, and took it literally just from beginning to end. And I feel like I had the concept of where I wanted it to end pretty early on. I think a lot of the conversation around visionOS 2 at the beginning of the summer when it was announced was very much underwhelmed, which is completely understandable when you look at it from just a list of enhancements.
Sure.
But when you start living with it, I feel like you start to see how these changes really do come together to form something bigger than just a list of changes. And so that's where I really started to get that concept together, just living with it and understanding what the changes are day to day and the impact of them. That's when I came to the conclusion that I came to, and that was pretty early in the summer.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many little things, like the thing they just offhandedly mentioned, you can use in Safari, you can watch videos in an environment. And it's like, okay, interesting. And they have the little note for Netflix.com and YouTube.com because they don't have apps, basically. And then that ramifications for that is if you don't want to use the silly Game of Thrones environment in Macs, you can just use one of Apple's environments because they support the system things. And that is such a nice quality of life thing. Just like a lot of apps, video apps, you can use Apple's environments now, which is so nice.
Yeah, it's again, it's one of those things you don't think about maybe the day-to-day impact of it when you're just looking at it on a list of features. But yeah, it really does just open up that integration with the environments, which is so cool, especially as we've talked about before. Anything with a reflection is awesome for watching movies because you just get that huge effect with the reflection off the lake or whatever it is. It's really incredible.
And we got that new one, that scary in a horror movie place.
We got that one. We also got Bora Bora, which I think is a little more enjoyable for...
But no reflections in the ocean, sadly. Imagine if you had waves with reflections off of the waves. That would be wild.
Oh, wow.
Might be distracting, though.
I'm just imagining that my fan spinning up immediately upon starting that video.
Right. Yeah, they need an environment of like surfing size waves in the distance, That'd be crazy.
Yeah, that would be cool. But just the fact that it integrates with any website in Safari that integrates with the system video player is awesome. And it's also an API for third-party developers. So it's not just for the big streamers anymore. Anyone can integrate with that. And I feel like watching video that way is the most impressive way to enjoy films and TV shows and videos. I think in my review, I was watching an episode of a podcast that MacStories puts out called Comfort Zone, which, watching that on the huge screen is cool as well. It's a little bit of a different experience from just watching it in a browser, but it really is just little things like that. Like you said, it makes a big difference as far as what's possible day to day on the platform.
And what did you actually write the review in? What application?
So that was a little bit of kind of diving all in with the new features as well, because the app I prefer to write in, especially long form, is IA Writer, which is not available on visionOS.
Yeah, I was going to say that is awesome visionOS app, right? Yeah.
I've written into them about it. I hope it's coming eventually, but it's not something that's happened yet. So it's only available on the iPad in terms of the way that I use it. I have it on my phone and Mac as well, but I tend to use it on the iPad. So I actually put a lot of hours in on AirPlay mirroring. I was wearing my Vision Pro, mirroring my iPad up and writing in IA Writer. So I had all my other resources in visionOS, but the actual writing part was actually done on the iPad in mirroring mode.
And isn't that it's such a cool experience? Because with the iPad, you got the trackpad and keyboard versus the iPhone. If you try to mirror, you still got to touch the stupid screen.
It's kind of trippy trying to use an iPhone in AirPlay mirroring mode because you're trying to navigate with your fingers without looking, and then you end up looking down at your hand and then back up at the mirrored mode. I guess you could put the mirrored window down, like near where you hold your hands, and maybe that would be helpful. But I've definitely found AirPlay mirroring to be more helpful for the most part with an iPad with a trackpad because it's just much easier. Although then you want to take that trackpad outside the window into visionOS windows, and it doesn't go, and that's very confusing.
Yes. Hopefully, I'd love the full Mac Virtual Display experience for iPad, and then also bring in audio into Mac Virtual Display. That should happen as well at some point.
Yeah, I feel like those two features hopefully will eventually be merged, and you get the best of both in one form. That would be ideal, especially being able to start from the Vision Pro to mirror the iPad instead of having to start from the iPad. That part threw me off a little bit each time I got set up.
Yeah, you could take it in the control center on iPad OS. You can make a big mirroring button there in control center, right?
yeah, make that as big as possible in the new customizable control center. That's my tip.
Right. Oh man. And then so you wrote it in IA Writer on the iPad through AirPlay mirroring, which is a brilliant way to like use both OS at the same time and be using the OS. And one thing I'm curious about, I often forget, was that there in visionOS 1 or is that new? Especially later in the summer where you've used it for a good 3 months. Did you run into that at all? And I'm guessing you don't have a second backup Apple Vision Pro to cross-check like many people have multiple iPads to check that stuff.
Yeah, my testing Vision Pro's in the shop, so
right,
I didn't have visionOS 1 to compare to.
Yeah, Federico didn't send you his to have a backup, right?
I think the hardest part is in like the nitty-gritty little details of settings. It's like, was that toggle there before or not? And having to Google around and see I know when I was writing the photos chapter, I was trying to remember the navigation windows for photos. And so I ended up finding a screenshot from someone else's Vision Pro review that helped me compare. So there's a little bit of looking up things like that. And then little features like in messages where you can look at the dictation icon and start speaking and it'll just automatically fill in. I was like, wait a second, wasn't it there before? And it was, but it was only for search bars. So it's like very, very nitty gritty sometimes, and trying to figure all that out is definitely interesting.
The look to dictate thing, I toggled that off after trying it a bit because I just don't like that feature. I don't know. I'd rather have the keyboard up. Sometimes I can't talk and it like overrides the keyboard and I actually look at it. Is that something you've left enabled? You find it useful?
No, I don't use it either. I don't talk to my computers. That's just not really, the only computers that I talk to are the HomePods. And that's usually just to change the home scene and things like that. I tend to keep a keyboard connected to my Vision Pro anytime I'm using it.
Yep.
And that's my main input. Although sometimes I'll do that little look at the virtual keyboard and pinch if it's real quick. But no, I don't talk to it very often. And maybe that's a feature that I've just not explored enough. But for whatever reason, I just tend to type and find that more natural for me.
Yeah, even the HomePods in our household, I was told no always listening Siri in our house. So they are AirPlay receiver, destinations. That's what they are, the HomePods in our house, which is fine. They're great speakers, and I love AirPlay. So
I've done the thing where you press and hold on top of the HomePod to get it to hear you when Siri's being funny and won't listen. But that's a whole computer that you can only really speak to, which is interesting. Whereas I'm thankful on Vision Pro they give us those options, but we also have especially physical keyboard input. That really is key for me.
So one question I'm super curious about, the screenshots. This is perhaps the most frustrating kind of thing in visionOS, to try to get that perfect screenshot. What trials and tribulations did you go through to get these looking as good as you did?
Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate you saying that they look good, because every one that I look at, I'm like, oh, I could have done that better if I'd have tried one more time. But it was a lot of trial and error. It all starts with the developer strap. You have to get that in order to get the full res.
Okay, so you do have a developer strap then?
Yes, I do. And I'm secretly hoping that Apple will add more capabilities to it, like Ethernet or USB at some point, so I can justify that purchase a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
did the one true John send you that? Because I think you need a developer account to actually buy one, right?
He helped me out with it. Yeah, he helped coordinate with me on getting it, which I very much appreciate. Because it's $300, and on top of that, you have to have the $100 a year developer account. I was like, could I save a little bit of money here, maybe?
Right.
So you get that, and you hook it up to your Mac. I was using an M1 Pro, MacBook Pro, actually my work machine. I have an M1 iMac at home, and I didn't want to push it too far. So I used the MacBook, which also helped because it's mobile, and I can go to different places to get different shots, which helped with moving around my house and making sure you also have to be aware of privacy and things like that too.
Yeah, that's the thing with screenshots. Like, most time I do screenshots, I throw up the environment to hide my house, but in some cases you want to show your actual environment. So you have your kitchen looking all nice with the fish tank all nice and clean and all that. So
yeah, it was a lot of arranging beforehand. I also found that in particular, the screenshot of me playing Game Room with Sigmund, that really put a lot of pressure on the Vision Pro. And if the Vision Pro gets too hot while you're hooked up to Xcode in screenshot mode, it'll just give up and say, you cannot take any more screenshots till this thing cools down. So I actually couldn't do SharePlay and environments at the same time to get that screenshot. And I was trying to get it as a video, and even that was too much. So it had to be a photo screenshot, and I couldn't have an environment. And that's why you could see my bedroom in the background there. I wasn't planning on including that as the backdrop for that shot, but it was just necessary for the system to not overheat. So lots of little considerations there. You have to be aware of making sure your head is level. I always felt like I was twisting my left eye just a little higher than it needed to be, but I guess maybe I just naturally hold it a little tilted normally.
Yeah, you almost need something on your head, like a little balance thing to remind you where your head should be.
Yeah, I had to go against my natural instinct of like, okay, this looks right. And I guess maybe it's something with my vision or just the way I naturally hold my head, but I had to twist my head a little bit. And then also too, you've got not only the left and right kind of making sure you're even with the horizon, but you have to make sure you're dead on with the window and not a little bit twisted to the left or the right. And so what ended up happening, especially for the photo ones, is I would kind of do an array of shots. You have 30 seconds once you've started the screenshot tool to take as many as you want to, and you're just hitting the space bar on the MacBook to take those shots. And so I'd kind of twist my head a little bit, take a shot, and end up with 5 or 6 options. And even after that, I usually went into Photomator after the fact and just kind of realigned just a little bit. So the photos, you can cheat a little bit. The videos, you'll notice that some of those are just a little bit not quite perfect, and that's because you can't really do much with those. They kind of are what they are. And so I just did my best to hold my head the right way and not move too much too, because if you're moving your head, then it's very shaky. So it's a totally different experience than taking screenshots on your iPhone or iPad. It made me very much appreciate when I'm writing a review of an iPhone app and I could just take a screenshot and throw it through, Federico's shortcut or into ShareShot or something like that. Very different experience with Vision Pro screenshots for sure.
And it was better to do that versus just taking video and taking still frames from the video as far as the quality, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I didn't actually try to take a still frame from a video. I have to imagine, again, with my struggles to hold my head perfectly still, that it probably would have had a little bit of wobble.
Yeah.
So,
but that'd be the other way to do it, to make sure, I'm going to lean my head this way and that, and then I can find where I should, grab from.
That is a good thought. I might have to try that next time. I will say that having taken a lot of screenshots and screen recordings just in visionOS with the Control Center controls and seeing how low resolution those are, I was really happy with how nice they actually turned out using Xcode and the developer strap. I actually had pretty low expectations for how those were going to turn out, and I thought they, quality-wise, looked great. I thought the environments looked really sharp, and all of that looked awesome. So it definitely is a huge step up using the developer strap from what you get just out of visionOS natively, but it's a whole process.
The other thing that the other MacStories reviewers didn't have to do is you became a hand model, sort of. Did you do it? Did you go get a manicure or anything before you took your grabs with your hand?
I should have. I really should have. What happened actually is that I said, okay, I'm just going to test out this screenshotting tool and see how far I get. And ended up just doing all the screenshots in one go. And it took me 2.5 hours maybe to knock those out for the entire review. But once I got going, I didn't want to stop. So I didn't really have consideration for all of that. And there's actually one shot in particular that I thought I might get some feedback for, but I haven't yet. So I probably shouldn't say anything, but a little behind the scenes here. My Apple Watch was charging when I took those screenshots. So there's one shot where you can actually see
the indentation,
the tan line from my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad if you go back and find it. But so far, no one said anything. So
that's funny.
Maybe it wasn't too noticeable.
Yeah. And then I'm curious, did you use any kind of super resolution mode from like Pixelmator on the zoomed in shot of the dial?
I tried it, but I found with that particular tool on things that are really pixely, it actually over smooths them to the point that they look kind of fake. So no, that's actually straight off of it. And that screenshot was a little tricky trying to get the perspectives right to compare between two things. And that was an interesting one to get for sure. But I did use Photomator to actually crop it and get the perspective right. But the super resolution, it was pretty obvious that I was using something on that, and so I just ended up leaving it as is.
That setting in particular, I find to be the weirdest decision Apple made in the Settings app, because you'll know, like if you go in Settings and you have a digital crown area, it only shows you immersion, and then you have to go to like the sound area to enable the sound. It's so bizarre that the sound option isn't alongside the immersion. They're like two separate areas of settings. Did you find that weird as well?
I did, especially since in the review I was trying to walk people through how to get it the way they wanted it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you have to go to this section and then to this section. So I think by default it controls both, and you can change in the digital crown settings which one is focused by default. But then if you actually want to turn off sound, you have to go to the sound settings and disable it. And I feel like that should just be an option in the digital crown settings, because I think literally the digital crown settings, it's just that one toggle. It's
is.
Okay, let's put
mine
both
just shows, I can't do anything here, can I? No, I can't.
Exactly. Yeah, I've actually found that I kept sound off of the digital crown, so the digital crown is literally just an immersion tool, because there's so many other options for changing system volume now.
Yeah, I have it off as well. I was never good at looking at either one, but I didn't even realize this. So there's an option now to choose which it defaults to when you turn that. Mm-hmm. And before it was one of the... Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because most of the time I've got my AirPods Pro in and I'll just use the stem. But if I don't, you get the new hand gesture, and every app has an option as well if you're playing something back. So yeah, there are so many options there. And I do find it nice to just get rid of that.
Yeah, I think the digital crown is perfect for the immersion, because it just really, it makes sense as you're twisting it. The world around you changes. It feels like such a cool connection, but trying to control two things with it and get your eyes just right, it never fully connected for me. So I'm thankful that that's configurable now.
Does Apple ever teach you that double tapping the digital crown just brings you back into pass-through mode fully and pauses video? I know I discovered that at some point. Was that done in any kind of onboarding in visionOS 1 or?
I remember it coming up at some point. I feel like it came up in the context of immersive video, because when you're watching immersive video in visionOS 1, there weren't super clear ways to get out of it. visionOS 2 makes it better because you can actually make it just a window now that you can watch instead of being fully immersed. Yeah, it's so weird. And Sigmund gave me the idea to stick my head through the window and then look around, and it's very cool. But I feel like in visionOS 1, when you first started immersive video, there was a little tutorial to double tap to get out of it, which is kind of the main way to do it back then.
Yeah, and I use that all the time. So if I've got like a bunch of windows open and I need to talk to someone, I'll just double tap and it hides all the distractions and stuff. Do you use that a bunch too? Or is that something you find?
I don't use that shortcut a ton. I find myself twisting the digital crown more often than not, and I'm not sure why that's my go-to, but something about that motion just connects with me, and I've gotten pretty quick about, I could twist it just enough to completely get out of immersion if I need to, and then get right back into it. So yeah, that's been my way. I need to try to use that shortcut more often because it is very handy.
Yeah, because even if I'm just in entirely pass-through mode, I'll use it to just hide all my windows, so I'm not like distracted or they're peeking through a window kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I feel like just the way I use Vision Pro, I'm usually staring at a wall.
Right, and someone's behind you, so it's not an issue, yeah. Versus I'm against a wall and everyone's in front of me kind of thing.
Yeah, which is the better way to use it. It's just the context that I use it in, I just end up turning towards the person and away from the windows is how I usually do that.
That makes sense. One thing I love that you point out is the new gesture for going home and all that. It's the literal home button that's in there. That didn't really click with me until I read your review that that's the original home button. It lives on in visionOS now.
It's such a lovely little touch. It's like, okay, we've not had the home button on the iPhone other than the SE for quite some time now. It's not even an icon that maybe some people who are just getting into the iPhone Apple ecosystem really would even connect with. But to bring it back for this gesture, just a little nod to Apple's history, I think it's such a cool little note. And it still communicates the same thing that it always has, is, getting back to your list of apps, which is, I think, is great.
Do you find yourself using the gesture to go home? Because most of the time, I'm still tapping my head to go home.
I feel like my percentage of using the home gesture versus the digital crown is getting higher and higher. It's one of those gestures it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, tapping the digital crown just has become ingrained in me. So,
and I find it faster. It's like slightly faster to just click on my head versus it to recognize my hands out and I'm looking at it.
I feel like for me, it's not as much about speed, but about not having to swing my arm and kind of get out of the position that I'm in, especially if I'm on a keyboard or something. And so I've been using that gesture more and more. I'd say probably at the beginning of the summer, it was like 50-50, and I've moved more to like 75-25, where 3 out of 4 times I'm using the gesture. And I still do reach up to the digital crown sometimes, especially, I mean, if your arm's already near there, or if you're not in the middle of a motion or something, then it makes sense. But I think it was smart of Apple to leave both in, because if you tap the digital crown and it didn't do that now, it'd be like, what in the world? Like, I have to do this whole motion thing. I feel like that'd be frustrating. So, but I feel like it'll become more natural over time to do the gesture than pushing the digital crown.
Yeah, and sometimes in pitch darkness, the gesture doesn't work as well. The other thing, it's getting better with the later betas on 2.1 that I'm on. I've noticed that it's improving, but I had issues a lot of the time if I'm in a fully immersive environment, it's just not seeing my hand even with light on. Did you ever encounter that? Like, you're looking at your hand, but you're in a fully immersive environment, and I just didn't want to see my hand in that situation.
I've only ever had that in low light when I know to expect it because it warns you. I've never run into that with lighting on, but
yeah,
I'm still on 2.0 right now. I'm living off the beta life for a minute after the review.
Right.
And so I've had good luck with that, but hopefully if there is an issue there with the breakthrough, that they get that worked out, because I found that to be really helpful, obviously, to be able to see your hands when you're in an environment.
Yeah, 2.1's weird. It feels like it's just bug fixes, and they're like, we're going to wait till 2.2 to add some new features, kind of thing.
Yeah. Every time there's a new beta for 2.1, I check the visionOS Reddit, and it's always, is the Mac display in there? Is the extended Mac display in there? And of course, the answer is always no, it's not there yet. I know people are very excited. That's one of the 2 big features from visionOS 2 that haven't come yet, is the really wide Mac display, and then multi-view in the TV app is also supposed to be coming. So those are the 2. They have to leave a couple on the table for the later updates.
They do. I mean, the soccer season's almost over, so they better hurry,
Yeah, and Friday Night Baseball just wrapped up too, so I guess
we'll get multi-view
once
year. There's absolutely no sports available on the TV app. So I've never tried. So the fully immersive video you discovered, I did not know this until I read your review, because I've watched fully immersive. I just didn't know that button was there. You can put that into a window, which is kind of cool. Is it accurate? So you can stand up and like walk through the video and like go in fully immersive? Is that a thing?
So what you can do is, if you look around the window, you're not going to see anything, just like any other visionOS window. It's just going to be blank. But if you walk up to it and stick your head in it, then you can look up, down, and around, just like you're in an immersive video. It's really wild. And then you pull your head back out and you're in your regular environment again. I don't think it's anything that you would want to do regularly when you're watching it. I feel like the purpose of being able to window it is, first of all, just being able to watch it when you're doing other things, or when you have other things pulled up and you're not able to be fully immersed, but also for people who maybe fully immersive video just isn't an option for whatever reason. This makes that accessible to them in a way that is not going to cause any issues for them, which I think is great.
Yeah, like perhaps there's a helicopter scene and you can't handle that, so you put it in that window, and then once you're out of the helicopter and back in something less queasy for you, you can throw back in immersive, something like that. Yeah.
Now I watch those helicopter scenes full screen because I love that feeling. I love having my stomach caught, and it really is impressive how immersive video can do that. I'm loving the Hawaii video. It's just
so good,
so beautiful. I love that so much.
And I lived in Hawaii for a year. It's like, it really reminds me. It's like, oh, this is why this place is so special. Yeah. So rearranging your home screen. What did you settle on for your kind of arrangement, and what are you happy with having for your apps?
So it's actually changed even since the review. You can see in the screenshot, the very first header image for the review is actually my home screen that I was using at the time. And the way that I settled then was I had my most used visionOS apps on the first screen, and then the second screen was my most used compatible iPad apps, which actually some of those I use more than the visionOS apps, but I couldn't get past mixing them. Since then, I've come to accept, it's okay to mix and match a little bit. So now I've got my most used apps on the first screen, and it's 2 rows of visionOS apps and 1 row of compatible apps. So I've still got them separated a little bit, but they're on the same screen now. And then I guess my second screen is still compatible apps. And then after that, as I wrote in the review, I just let chaos ensue because there's not great tools for organizing all the pages unless you really just want to go through nitty gritty. So I just, beyond the 2 that I use the most, I just have accepted that they're not going to be organized, and then I'm just going to use Spotlight for the rest of them.
Yeah, I think I have 4 pages that are organized, and after that it goes in the chaos. And then something you pointed out and noticed is that once you reorganize your apps, it just stops doing the alphabetical organization, period. Like, it just does not exist anymore, which is kind of crazy to me. That, I don't know. It's weird. Like, I wish there was a way to have both exist, where you have your first 3 or 4 that are that way, and then some organization. I guess that's called the app library, which we don't have yet.
Yeah, it's like binary. The home screen is organized alphabetically, other than the first page, which is kind of Apple's priority apps at the time. And it's arranged alphabetically until you move one, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now it's just all on you. And including moving a compatible app out of the compatible folder, which I'm so thankful for, because again, so many of the apps that I use still haven't made that jump to visionOS for whatever reason. And so having to go into that folder every time was a huge pain. So being able to move those out is great. And I love the little bubble that they exist in. It's really cute, and it looks nice. Again, mixing and matching them on the home screen sometimes can be a little, I don't know, it doesn't look perfect, but customization, I mean, you're kind of sacrificing perfection for functionality, right? And that's a trade-off that I'm happy to make. But I agree with you. I think the app library is really something that will eventually come to the home view in visionOS. I think that's the next step here. Not only the app library being able to only have the apps that you need on the home view, but also being able to create folders and kind of tuck some things away or organize them that way. You know, oh, here's all my games. You know, I don't necessarily need those all on the main home screen, but you can only have the one compatible apps folder, and you can't customize that. The only thing you can do is move iPad apps in and out of that as you want to. And you can move those around within it, but you can't move any visionOS apps into it. And so it's weird. There's only one folder on the home view. And so I'm hopeful
I love a folder. Yeah. Give me like a streaming apps folder.
Folders would be great. And the app library, I feel like that's a solution for so many problems with the home screen on iPhone and iPad. And I think it would help a lot with the home view and visionOS as well.
Speaking of AirPlay mirroring, one frustration I experienced was, oh, awesome. There's this iTunes Extra of this long documentary. It's not on Movies Anywhere. It's not compatible. Let me AirPlay mirror this awesome iTunes Extra into visionOS. And you know what, Devon? There's copyright protection. So they think you're going to steal this AirPlayed video from visionOS, which has the worst kind of capture system ever. It's so bizarre that Apple doesn't have some kind of way to enable this. It's Apple's own technology. It's not like AirPlaying to some weird device. Like, I don't know, maybe we need AirPlay secure video where it's like you're AirPlaying to a visionOS. Nothing's getting stolen out of visionOS, guys.
It's strange. I don't envy the folks at Apple who have to contend with copyright and making sure that the people who make the films and shows are happy with the implementations. Even Wired, trying to hook up an iPad to a projector, sometimes it's like, okay, I have to figure something out here because I'm getting hit by some copyright protection. And AirPlay mirroring and visionOS is just another example of that. I feel like they could fix the iTunes Extra thing pretty, they could just put iTunes Extras in the TV app and that would solve that particular issue. But I agree with you that the copyright protection is it's one of those constant frustrations that people who want to watch their stuff on other stuff run into. And it's just one of those things that I feel like Apple has to appease the Hollywood folks, and so they kind of take the hit on the user side, but I wish there was a better solution for sure.
Yeah, the iTunes Extra situation, I'm glad there's a footnote about this because it is so freaking frustrating. Because you know what are in iTunes Extras? alternative versions of movies. Like if I want to watch the extended cut of Alien 3, that's an iTunes Extra. So the only way you're watching, I'm glad to discover that Movies Anywhere has all the extras content in their visionOS app. So if it's compatible, you can open up Movies Anywhere and watch the extended cut, all the documentary stuff. That's all in the visionOS version of Movies Anywhere. But some stuff's not compatible with that app. And it's really frustrating because I was trying to watch Gladiator, the extended cut, and it's part of the iTunes Extra, and I couldn't get at it in my Vision Pro. So hopefully they address that, because it's so ridiculous that that's not a part of it.
Yeah, it's a really strange oversight. You've got this platform that's so focused on entertainment, obviously, and it's the best way to watch films if you're watching by yourself, but then they don't have the extras. I feel like it's just one of those things that didn't make the checklist for the first couple versions and will hopefully be filled out. But I mean, the TV app in general, it's a very interesting piece of software to keep an eye on, because Apple's priorities are always kind of shifting in that sense, and you never really know what's going to happen to your favorite feature, because just as they're shifting more towards streaming and kind of curating content and recommendations and things like that, it's there's some decisions that are made there that I don't always necessarily agree with, and it's one of those things I keep a very close eye on. And it's just another quirk of the TV app that the iTunes Extras aren't available on visionOS.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when iTunes Extras were this downloadable thing that you could extract the individual movie files, and I could sync those individual movie files to iPods and like iPads just through iTunes as like, let me take the stuff from the zip. Because it used to be this weird package that you download your Mac. And that has changed much. It's much, I think, better now ultimately as a streaming thing. But it's sad you can't download this stuff anymore either.
Yeah, the good old days.
Oh yeah, right. And then I love this kind of thing you point out about iPad apps. So moving compatible apps out of the home view and back into the compatible apps folder is even stranger than getting the icons out in the first place. To do so, you have to enter jiggle mode and then choose the minus button attached to the app icon. That's the button used to delete visionOS apps, but for iPad apps, it brings up a menu with two options: remove from home view and delete. The remove from home view will move it back into the compatibility apps folder. And you mentioned it's dangerously close to that delete button, so proceed with caution. Because eye tracking, it's pretty easy to accidentally glance over. Eye tracking sometimes has messed with me a bit. Have you tested this? Is there a confirmation after you hit delete, or is it deleted once you hit delete?
I believe there is a confirmation, so at least you've got that extra
Okay, that
step.
is at least something. But I've never tried moving stuff back into it, so I'm glad you figured that out, because that's a bizarre method for sure.
The first time I booted up visionOS 2, one of the first things I tried was moving around app icons just to see what it was like. And so I opened up the compatible apps folder and I grabbed an app that I wanted to put on my home view, and I just tried to pull it out of the folder like you would on iOS and just drop it. And I was like, okay, so how do you get these out? Because I know you can. You have to actually press and hold and enter a submenu to move them in and out, which is strange, but I guess maybe with the hand tracking and eye tracking, holding one icon over another maybe just is a little too much for the system to comprehend. So that could explain why there's no folders too. But I feel like they could come up with paradigms for that sort of thing rather than making us go into submenus.
Now, you can't rearrange the compatible apps folder, right? That stays alphabetical, and the only rearranging you have is on the home view?
No, you actually can. You can rearrange those and create multiple pages within it as well. And once you do that, it also loses the alphabetical aspect of it.
If you remove an iPad app from the compatible apps folder, does the alphabeticalization sorting still work in iPad's folder? Or is even the act of removing it toggle that off? Do you know?
Ooh, I didn't test that because I broke it immediately upon installing visionOS 2, and I never tried to put it all back. I don't know if I don't think there's a setting for resetting it.
Is there a setting to like restore home screen like there is now for Control Center? Is there like a put this back to normal?
Not that I've come across.
Okay.
I don't believe so. I think once you move one icon, you're on your own.
That would be nice if they added a button to fix this, please. Back to normal. And then you mentioned Spotlight as a way to find apps. Something I really wish they did was make Spotlight not buried in Control Center. Make that, how they move Mac Virtual Display to the frontmost layer.
Mm-hmm.
Spotlight should really be the frontmost layer of that, I think. Or even make it an app icon on the home view. Like make search.
Or one of the icons on the left side of the home view. You've got people and environments, and you could put Spotlight there.
Because the suggested apps are in Spotlight, and that's so handy. It'd be nice to have that as a top level thing, right?
Yeah, I don't use Spotlight to its fullest extent on visionOS because I just forget it's there. And even with a keyboard attached where you have the command space keyboard shortcut, I still just usually end up going to the home view to get what I need. Or, if I'm digging for a shortcut, I open the Shortcuts app. And I feel like Spotlight could be a lot more prominent in visionOS. They could put it at the top of the control center or in the home view or both, because it is so helpful, especially on a platform that's so much about using your eyes and your hands to navigate. The quicker you can get to anything and the less you have to exert to get there, the better. So I'd love to see Spotlight get more prominence for sure.
Now, the People tab is an interesting thing. So you point out that beyond apps, the home view also houses two other sections: people environments, which aren't customizable. So you can't reorganize the environments one day, maybe. But I personally find the people view unhelpful due to the fact that I can't manually add context to it. The ability to favorite contexts that are already here in the view is nice, but selection of people seems to be influenced by call history, which isn't the best source of information with me either. If the people view was customizable launcher for calling or messaging my favorite context, that might be something I take a second look at. But you also point out here, there is no Contacts app, which is just very bizarre. There's no Find My either, which is very aggravating. I'll have Mac Virtual Display open just for the Find My app, because I want to know, do I have 10 minutes or an hour before I need to take this off and be ready for family to arrive,
Yeah. It's one of those things, and it's one of the themes, I think, in my review, or one of the wishes at least that I share at the end, is I really just want to see visionOS get the full platform treatment and not have these little holes like this. I do laugh when I think about the people view, because it reminds me of the early days of the Apple Watch when it was very focused on people. I feel like also in Control Center back in the iOS, was it 8 days or around that time when there was a people view there, Apple always has to, with each platform, try this people view and then eventually come to the realization that people really just want a Contacts app.
It'd be cool if the Vision Pro could communicate with the Apple Watch, so you could send somebody your heartbeat along with your breathing rate, as some combined, here I am,
If that's how you want to communicate with your loved ones, Tim, I'm not going to judge you, but
because you can still send your heartbeat from the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
it's still buried in there. Oh gosh. Oh, and then I would love, with the Find My app, once it comes to visionOS, to have some crazy UI for you on chip devices. Imagine you're walking around your house and Vision Pro has some 3D thing that's navigating you through the room to try to find your lost AirTag.
Yeah, you can make it like a game. You're dodging stuff on your way to find your keys. Yeah. Either that, or you could have a really elaborate city map kind of projected onto your table with your Find My people as dots moving around the map. That would be cool too.
Totally. Yeah. And then keyboard awareness. This is the one feature in visionOS that it's been pretty rough in the beta. And it seems much better now. Has that been your experience, that it was kind of a rough start and it's getting better and better as far as it picking up on the keyboard in different lighting situations?
Most definitely. The first beta of visionOS 2, I could hardly get it to work. And one issue with my particular way that I use the Vision Pro is it's usually in pretty low light environments. Even my office at work, I don't like the overhead lighting. I like to keep it pretty. People say I work in a cave, which is a little bit of a exaggeration, I would say, but I don't like super bright lighting when I'm trying to work. So, I really, when it first came out as a beta, I almost couldn't get it to activate. But as I was testing it, especially towards the end of the process, I really found it to be a lot more stable. And I didn't even know that it was meant to support MacBook keyboards as well until I was actually writing the review on my iPad, and I had my iPad Magic Keyboard in front of me, and it came through, and I was like, what in the world? Like, this is not supposed to happen. And it's not actually a supported keyboard for the feature, but I guess it got mistaken for a MacBook keyboard and came through once. So I couldn't get it to do it again. It was only a couple times I was able to get it to go. But with the MacBook or with the Mac Magic Keyboard, either one of those, they came through very solid. And when I discovered that feature where you have to bring your hands near it to unveil the keyboard, that became like a game for me where, you pull your hands back and you have to get them pretty far away from the keyboard to get it to disappear completely. But the way I knew that the feature was kind of fully baked and ready to go and ready to be written about was when I started testing that feature, and I could very, very consistently get it to disappear and then reappear with my hands.
Yeah, I need to re-enable that because that was not good for me early on. One bug I had that was so delightful, it only happened this once, but I was getting 2 video apps playing simultaneous with audio coming from each window, and it was such an amazing 10 minutes of my life where, this is what I thought we'd have, where you could have multiple audio streams all at once, and then the bug fixed itself, and I haven't been able to reproduce it because that was so nice.
Disappointing.
Yeah, I know.
I've basically forgotten that computers are capable of playing multiple audio feeds. Because I've used the iPad for so long. One day I was using my Mac, and I think I was playing a podcast, and then I wanted to start a YouTube video, and I just assumed that one would take over for the other. And when they both started playing, I was like, wait a second. Oh yeah, this is how it works on Macs and other computers.
Yeah.
It'd be nice on visionOS and iPadOS as well, for sure. Hopefully they'll both get it together before too long.
And then you tested the Magic Mouse. I do not have a modern Magic Mouse. I have older ones that I don't think are supported. But something you point out very interestingly is the gesture support isn't there, which is a bummer. It'd be nice if you had the 2-finger swipes to, and do different things there to navigate the system a bit more.
Yeah, all it has is scrolling, and so vertical scrolling works fine. But otherwise, yeah, I maybe it's a system limitation because there's no like mission control or window view picker for visionOS yet, and so maybe those will come in time. But for whatever reason, when I was using my trackpad with my Vision Pro, I didn't notice the lack of gestures as much. But with the Magic Mouse, I guess maybe I was just going deeper on the testing with it, and I thought that was an interesting thing. But it also does mean that if you want to use a different mouse with your Vision Pro, it's kind of on the same playing field. I used a super cheap Bluetooth mouse, just like a $10 one from Walmart or something I had lying around, and it worked just as well, and it actually, I wasn't sure what using a mouse on the platform would feel like, because it seems so kind of distant from spatial computing and what you're usually doing there, but it actually, it works really well. The cursor moves from window to window as you look to different ones, and you can navigate just like with a trackpad. And I don't use a pointer with visionOS most of the time, unless I'm doing some really fine-tuned text editing. That's when I find it most helpful, because you don't want to really like try to concentrate between 2 characters and try to pinch and get the cursor exactly where you want. So that's when I find it most helpful.
Sometimes when I'm at night and can't grab a keyboard, it feels like I spend like 15 minutes trying to send a single Mastodon post. And you can probably tell when I send this post that was mostly dictated, then I tried to clean up a bit. It's rough trying to edit there.
Yeah. Yeah, the keyboard is definitely necessary for any text input, and I'd say the mouse or trackpad is necessary for any text editing that you're going to do. So like I said, I always keep a keyboard handy when I've got my Vision Pro. I tend to, unless I'm like very specifically sitting down to watch a movie or something, I've always got that keyboard nearby.
The mouse will be nice with the little scroll wheel, I think, just scrolling pages versus doing the gestures and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like we might be too much flicking of your wrist to scroll a long web page, like if you're reading Federico's review or something like that. I feel like that can't be good for your wrist long term. So yeah, something else to scroll is definitely good.
And I need to test like a 4 or 5 finger pinch in on iPad that'll bring you home. I wonder if that does that on visionOS. I haven't really tried.
I don't believe that's there. I've tried a bunch of different, sometimes when you're trying those gestures, you just feel like you're flailing your fingers around to see what'll happen. But I haven't been able to get anything other than pointing, clicking, right clicking, and scrolling. Those are the only input methods I've been able to get going.
Yeah. The other thing you point out, the OS can now store eye and hand data for a single guest user for up to 30 days. So there's a chance the data gets wiped out before that 30 days is up.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see kind of the communication around this and how Apple explains to the guest user that they're going to store your data. And then also, so, there's obviously, you have to approve it and be well informed about what you're doing, which is great. But then I had my wife, who was testing it for me, take it off. I put it on, made sure it was switching back to my mode. And then I had her put it back on to see what that second experience is like for the guest user. And it's very interesting because by default in visionOS 1, the guest user mode would just go straight into the setup and, pick up your eyes and your hands and calibrate. But with a repeat guest user, if you have a guest user data stored, then if someone else puts it on in guest mode, it defaults to this window that asks you, are you this returning user or are you someone new? And you can't actually select it with your eyes and hands because it's not calibrated to your eyes and hands. You have to use the digital crown to scroll and select. So it's this weird mode that the Vision Pro gets into that it's like, I don't know you. I can't force myself to get to know you. So you're going to have to tell me what's going on here. And once my wife did that and told the Vision Pro that she was the returning guest, then it started reading her hands and eyes perfectly. So it's a very well thought out feature, but it's also kind of a precarious state to put the Vision Pro in where it's like, okay, I'm not set up for you, or at least I don't know if I'm set up for you or not, and I can't delete this old data, so you're going to have to tell me what's going on before we can proceed.
Something that is a bit of frustration is, I understand why this is the case, but you can't share optical lenses with another person. So if a guest user has similar eyesight as you can't let them use your lenses unless you want them to use your normal view. You have to take the lenses out. I'd love some way, I don't know, eye test within Vision Pro to say, yeah, you're close enough to that one. Use that one. That's better. The other thing I'm curious about, if I ordered a second set of lenses, I know eye tracking, you have one scan without the lenses for yourself. You have one scan with your lenses in. I wonder if I got another set of lenses, can you save another set of hand and eye data if you buy more lenses, and will it remember that? Will that be added on to my profile kind of thing, or what that would do to the setup?
Yeah, I don't use lenses with my Vision Pro, so I don't have a ton of experience with that whole process, but I do find it very mysterious that the lenses have to be, scanned in and connected to the Vision Pro, connected to the user. It almost feels like some kind of like red tape that Apple's having to jump through to be able to even sell and distribute these lenses, like that they have to be tied to a person with a prescription and all this stuff. It's definitely interesting. And when you've got a household with multiple people who use glasses who want to use the Vision Pro, it definitely gets you in some weird spots.
Yeah, it's definitely like PlayStation. It's all aftermarket. They don't sell any first party stuff. I wonder what the Quest experience is like. I think it's all aftermarket. Maybe it's because Apple is so integrated that it's like so locked down because they're afraid of the government. And the big lens, you know.
Yeah, I also feel like visionOS is doing interesting things to adapt to people's vision. So even if you're not using lenses in visionOS 2, you can go in and adjust the distance between the lenses more finely.
Yeah.
And like there's like this whole, it looks like a vision test that you're taking. And there's even a warning in the screen. It's like, do not do this too quickly or you could make yourself sick. Like move very slowly here.
I didn't try this. So there's a new setting in visionOS 2 to more do that yourself versus the computer doing it for you.
Yeah, rather than just pressing and holding the crown and them spreading out and kind of trying to match your eyes, you can actually like really fine tune it. And I played with it and ended up just going with what the system recommended because I felt like I was getting into some, like I got my screen very blurry and I was like, okay, this is not right. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot happening in the hardware and software to calibrate to your vision that is beyond even what we fully know what's going on. And so Apple's very touchy, I guess, when it comes to swapping those pieces around because they just want you to trust them with it, I guess.
And PSVR 2 has a little dial where you can change the distance between the lenses. It's all in software for Apple. And one of the headsets has a variable diopter thing where inside the headset it can change from like a -4 to like a -2. So multiple people could use it without lenses because it just adapts to whatever your vision is. So hopefully Apple eventually figures that out because that'd be really cool to not need to buy the lenses in the first place.
Yeah.
Tell me about low light performance. I've noticed it being different from 1 to 2, but what are the actual changes here?
I don't think we've seen anything official announced on this. I feel like this is just one of those underhood things that I've personally noticed in my experience, and so I shared about it in my review. And
because the warning is different, right? It's not as angry at you.
It's not. Basically what it says is you're in low light. You probably should go to a better lit situation, but until then, we're not going to be able to show your hands over windows. And so that to me is a pretty good compromise for a lot of situations where I find myself in. I use Vision Pro a lot of times after my family goes to bed because that's when I do a lot of my work for MacStories is once they've gone off to bed. And so I don't want to go into another room and turn on a bunch of lights. And I just want to sit at my desk in the dark and work because once you're in visionOS with an environment, it doesn't really make any difference what room you're in.
And will you throw up a daytime environment to pretend it's a little middle of the day kind of thing?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the best. Like that's so nice. You're working. It's like midnight and like it's not bright, nice and bright. You're at the beach. It's great.
Yeah, it keeps you nice and aware and focused. And then you take it off and your eyes have to adjust to the dark.
Yes.
But I've found that it responds a lot better to those darker environments than it did in visionOS 1. In visionOS 1, if I turned my head the wrong way or if I got my hand too close to one of the cameras, the system would just completely, like, all my windows would disappear and it would just say, okay, we can't do anything with this. Like, it's too dark. And I have not seen that nearly as much with visionOS 2. What I found is that the windows aren't anchored to your environment anymore. Like, they're anchored to your view. And so if you move your head, it's kind of a strange effect where it doesn't feel like the window is floating in front of you. It just feels like it's anchored to your head in a way. And so they're not doing that work with the environment because they don't have the light to do it. But what that does is it just allows you to continue to work in the dark and not have to worry about your windows responding constantly. So as you said before, sometimes the hand tracking can get a little tough in the dark and doing those gestures. I found I can usually get it to happen if I might have to emphasize a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, I'm spreading my hand apart now. I'm looking at my palm very intentionally. But I found that the low light performance is so much better in visionOS 2 to the point that I would say in visionOS 1, it was multiple times each session. I would have to completely redo my setup because it just respawned. Now it maybe once every like 5 or 6 times that I use it at night, I'll have one respawn, but it also just gets back up and going so much more quickly and gets your windows back where you want them. So I appreciate that. It's not being advertised as a feature, but like you said, we've definitely seen some changes in the wording around it in the operating system.
Yeah.
And the way it works practically, at least in my use case, has been so much better.
Does Sigmund still use that IR blaster repeater thing?
I haven't asked him about that in a minute. Yeah, that's another solution to try and get the Vision Pro to see you better in the dark, is to just spray yourself with,
right.
with IR.
I think I might have more questions from my family, like, what is going on over?
Yeah, the Vision Pro, there's something about it that just makes people want to accessorize it even more and throw in more and more things. And I've tried to resist that as much as I possibly can, other than the peripherals. But yeah, it's one of those devices that once you make the leap to Vision Pro, it's like, okay, I can't get much more ridiculous. So let's just see what else I can do here.
Yeah. With personas, biggest improvement you've seen is the hand movements.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the faster kind of tracking, or what's going on there, you think?
So overall, the system with visionOS 2 is tracking your hands a lot more realistically. It's basically tripled the refresh rate on your hands from 30 to the system refresh rate, which is usually somewhere up 90 or higher. And so basically your hands just look more realistic. And that translates as well to the way the system is interpreting your hands for personas. And so, for a lot of people, I guess the difference between 30 and 90 hertz is not perceptible. But if you're the kind of person who can notice that, like if you care about ProMotion on your iPhone, you can probably see the difference between something moving at 30 frames and a higher frame rate. And so it just looks more natural and smooth. And personas in general, I just feel like they're trying to impersonate or be a avatar for the person that you're emulating. And so the better that it can do that, I mean, people talk with their hands, it's a part of communication. And so the more realistic they can make it, the better. And I've personally found that the hand tracking in visionOS 2, not only for personas, but also just when I'm using the system in my own environment, and I look at my hands, it just looks a lot better and smoother and makes for better hand tracking in general.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then another thing you point out, we already talked about the AirPlay mirroring and all that, but you can use Mac Virtual Display alongside an AirPlay mirror, which, the ultimate dashboard setup of everything going on there, right?
Yeah, it's really cool, actually. I mean, you can imagine a scenario where eventually the Vision Pro can support even more connections, and you just spread out all these different computers across your environment. You actually can get something similar to that with screens. Maybe I should have done a screenshot with a bunch of screens, windows of other Macs as well. But it's interesting because, AirPlay and Mac Virtual Display, you would think, are using very similar Apple technologies in the forms of handoff and continuity, but I guess they're separate enough that there's bandwidth for both, which is interesting, and I feel like could come in handy. You throw in between those two and universal control, I feel like you could get some pretty cool setups going there.
For sure, yeah. Something that wasn't in Beta 1 of visionOS 2, but is there at release, is Math Notes. I was so surprised. It came at like Beta 5 or something very late, where they finally added it. Yeah, any words on Math Notes? It's an interesting thing that they finally put in there.
Yeah, it's half there, right? It's in the Notes app. It's not in the Calculator app because there is no Calculator app.
That's
for
right.
visionOS. We can stop complaining about it on the iPad and start complaining about it on visionOS. And if they put it on visionOS, we'll complain about it on tvOS. We're just going to keep going here.
You need a calculator everywhere. I mean, let's be real. Okay, so idea. If it's on the TV OS, they need a mode where it has your now playing list, and you can like pick videos and add up the runtime kind of thing.
Oh,
would that be fun?
I did that with a database and collections. I counted up how much time I spent in front of the TV this year, and you don't want to know.
It's
don't
a scary
want to know.
thing. Yeah. Anyways.
But in the Notes app, if you're typing up some calculations, you can assign variables to numbers and then add them together. It's very similar to what you've seen on other platforms, which is cool. You don't have the handwriting aspect of it because there's no Apple Pencil support, but you can do it by typing, which is great. I mean, I've used it for just some quick calculations. Again, not having the calculator app in visionOS natively And I've found that sometimes I can do some calculations in Spotlight, but it doesn't always pick up on the fact that I'm trying to do calculations, and it tries to do a search instead. So I've actually gone to Notes to do calculations pretty often. And then there's a few different situations at work or even when I'm doing some budgeting stuff personally, where I'm kind of doing the same calculation over and over again, but the numbers change. And so I can just fill those in as variables and very quickly get that set up, which is nice.
With the Messages app, I've been struggling to get the emoji tapbacks to work. Is there any special trick to that? Or is it only like emoji that were previously used in the thread kind of thing?
I've found the best way to do it is with a trackpad, actually, which is it's kind of interesting, but I feel it's just more precise that way. I feel like those little bubbles are harder to navigate with eye and hand tracking. But Messages is an interesting update this year in that it gets some of the things like the emoji tapbacks if you can navigate to them. Yeah. But then there's also some features that are missing, like message scheduling, which I guess maybe makes sense because your Vision Pro could die. But it's definitely interesting.
In the scheduling thing, to my knowledge, it's server side.
Oh yeah, so it wouldn't matter.
I was told at least like you could turn off your phone could die. You could be in an airplane or whatever, and it'll still send, which is cool.
Yeah, which is weird because you can schedule emails on visionOS, which do actually depend on the device being awake. Yeah. So that almost seems opposite.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't fully understand that one. And also text effects are not a thing in visionOS. So if you're wanting to do jitter or whatever effect that you're wanting to do to make your emphasis, it's not there. So yeah, Messages is interesting, but I'd say for the emoji tapbacks, that precision, it's definitely tough to do with eye and hand tracking.
For sure. Yeah. Messages is a long way to go. Add the Find My support in there too.
We just got a list going here.
We do. 3D photo conversion. Breathtaking is the word you use to describe it, and I agree. It brings me to the tears at times with how good it is. Like it's really brings you back to a moment in time, and it's pretty cool. What are some more thoughts on this one?
I was very skeptical of this when they demoed it in the keynote. I was like, there's no way. Like, it's just not possible that they've done a good job with this. Like, maybe if you've got a really nice camera and you've got the perfect framing and the bokeh, and all that or whatever. But the way they did this, it's just, I don't know how they came up with this formula that they're using, but it's amazing. Like there's not using any depth data in the photo itself. Like you can just use a photo from the 90s you took on a film camera and scanned in, and it's going to work just as well.
I need to look at my own birth photos. I'm not sure. I'm sure those are in my library somewhere from 30 years, 36 years ago, whatever it is. That will be interesting to check out.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone back to a couple from my childhood or maybe more when I was a teenager, because that's when I have, more digital pictures, and it's awesome to relive those moments. And of course, you're drawn to the big moments.
Yes.
Weddings and lots of stuff with my son.
The one from the wedding that was the most bizarre was, our photographer was kind of like from the audience perspective kind of thing. It's like, oh, this is what it was like to sit at my own wedding. This is
exactly.
Really bizarre.
If only you'd had a spatial video camera there, then you could get that full experience of sitting at your own wedding.
I know. How many years until they add this to videos?
Oh yeah, I don't even know, but I can't wait to see it. It's that this conversion that they're doing, the way that it add depths, it's not just like a predefined number of layers or anything like that. It's not just 2 or 3. Like it really does just feel like it feels like what they started with the iPhone 7 and portrait photos has all been leading up to what they're doing now with the conversion here. And I love it so much. I think it's amazing the way when you move your head left and right, it literally shifts perspective as if you're looking at the scene from a different spot. And then also something I love to do with these photos is moving the frame towards you and away from you, because there comes a point when the subject actually pops through the window that you're moving and comes out at you. And then if you move it far enough towards you, then it looks like you're looking at a window into this scene. So the way the perspective shifts. It really does it's reliving that memory in a way that is so much more visceral than just looking at it on a screen. Or I look at a lot of my pictures up on my TV because I love to relive them that way, which is amazing. And also that has the benefit of being a group experience, whereas with visionOS, the only way you can have that is through SharePlay with someone else who has a Vision Pro, which is fun.
The whole family should have one, yes.
Exactly. Everyone's got to have one. Now, the SharePlay experience with photos and Vision Pro is a ton of fun. I did it with Sigmund and showed him some pictures, and we looked at some stuff together, and you get that depth effect on the other device as well, which is cool. But I would say the conversion, it has a lot of the same issues that portrait photos had when they were released and continue to have. Hair is always an issue. Basically anything with photo editing, hair is going to be a struggle because it's one of those unsolved problems. I also found that sometimes when two layers are overlapping, it can get the distances wrong. And there was one picture where my chin was in front of my shoulder and it looked like my neck was like a foot long or a foot longer than it should be or something like it just it just didn't look quite right. And it's not perfect, and that's why I'm thankful that we were getting spatial photography on the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, and 16 Pro line, as well as on the iPhone 15 Pro with an upcoming software update. So you'll be able to actually take those natively. But the conversion is so good that I don't feel like I'm missing out up to this point.
Yeah, that's the thing. At times, I feel like the conversion's better than the actual, if I took a spatial capture. I did a test. It's like, I'm not sure which one I like better, quite honestly, in some situations. And in low light, I think the conversion's going to be better, for sure. But even in bright light, it's like you could toss a coin in many situations as to which one's better.
Wow. Yeah, and that just speaks to, I think, the power of that algorithm that they come up with, which is, it's machine learning. It's not Apple Intelligence necessarily, because that's not on visionOS. But
it is funny, though. So to signify that they did a machine learning conversion, they've got a rainbow Apple Intelligence colored cube. It is Apple Intelligence colored, but it's not Apple Intelligence. I don't know. Maybe eventually they'll start calling it Apple Intelligence when more features start arriving. Because if you just do a normal spatial photo from an iPhone, it's gray. So that's kind of interesting. So there's a way in the OS to tell this was converted or this was captured, which is interesting.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think eventually that distinction will go away and it'll all just go back to being, if they want to call everything Apple Intelligence, that'll just be the thing. But we've got to get past this hardware point where most devices can't even run it right now. So,
and it saves, after you do a conversion, it saves it into your library. So I'm curious, like the file, I'd love to do a test file size comparisons. I think we could actually run the test. You save the photo before you convert it, then you do the thing, see if you can save that in some way, and I'm curious about the file size difference there.
Yeah, there's lots of little additions, I think, to the photo file sizes this year. You've got the photographic styles this year, which are contributing to file size, and then the spatial aspect as well. So, I feel like photo files are always getting bigger for different little things that we're tacking onto them like this. But I would say, personally, if they gave me an option to just convert my entire library to spatial, I would do it. I would just hit the button and let it run for 3 days or however long it takes to convert them all, because I love it. And I love the way that the system in visionOS 2 will suggest photos to you as well. There's a row of featured spatial photos. And that's the only set that it will actually convert for you without you explicitly asking it to. But I found some real gems there. So I love that feature as well. And yeah, I couldn't have been more wrong with my initial impression of this. I feel like so many of the things that Apple does with photos, they use these very perfect demos. And a lot of times in person, it just doesn't always live up to, I'm just not as good of a photographer as Apple's photographers, right? And so sometimes it doesn't translate. But this, it's just, you hit the button and it does it. And the change that it makes is truly stunning. So, I think if you have a Vision Pro and haven't tried this feature because you don't think it's going to have the impact that you want it to, just give it a shot, because I was completely blown away by it.
Yeah, this line I love is spatialized photos feel less like pictures and more like memories. That sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I love that line. It's like, yeah, these are memories. And old pets and stuff is another really emotional one. You get to be with your pet again. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like step one towards, more fully immersive memories that, we'll eventually get to, but it's a huge leap from a 2D photo to a spatial photo. And I love it so much.
And the Photos app got a lot of the revamps the other apps did with iOS 18. I'm trying to remember if we got everything.
Well, we didn't get the full redesign. It's not one pane like it is on iPhone and iPad. It's more like the Mac where it's still that tabbed view, but you get the Collections tab, which has all the new features in it otherwise. And so you get the day view, which is super cool, getting to just review photos for a particular day.
Yeah.
You can rearrange the Collections view just like on iPhone and iPad and make it just like what you want. It's just not a unified view in one single tab like it is on iPhone.
Gotcha. And a cool little tidbit about spatial photo capture on iPhone 15 Pro and 16 line is those can be live photos, but the actual spatial part is not live. So you get kind of the best of both worlds where in Vision Pro, you can view it as a spatial photo, or you can toggle the spatial stuff off and then you can view the live photo. So, which is nice. You're not like having the pick, do I want a live photo or a spatial photo? Now, one day I want live spatial photos. That's that's the dream, right? Where you can capture that as well.
That would be really cool. I have gotten in a situation where on my Vision Pro, I have to despatialize a photo that I converted so I could do the live and go back. Somehow in the midst of taking screenshots for my review, I managed to play a live photo while looking at a spatial photo. Like it converted back to 2D, played the live, and then went back to spatial. And it must have been a glitch because I could not replicate it. But right now it is a little bit interesting having to choose between the two. And you can quickly toggle back and forth, but you can't experience both.
Right, yeah. And I wonder if they'll ever let us spatialize panorama photos.
Yeah, because the panoramas are almost immersive in and of themselves, the way you stretch them out and wrap them. So if you could add that extra layer of depth, I mean, you basically got an environment at that point without the movement. So that would be really cool. I wonder if I don't know if there's a way you could like trick it into spatializing and then getting it back into panorama mode. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't let you currently. If it recognizes it's big enough to be a panorama, it just doesn't let you, which is kind of sad. Yeah. One line I love here in the Mindfulness app. I don't recommend replicating this experiment, but I tried enabling the feature and holding my breath during a meditation. The animation held steady, waiting for me to exhale before starting its next emotion. So, like, this could be a little game where you try to hold your breath as long as possible, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's like a different app. It's not Mindfulness. It's like, a new game that Apple has made, I guess.
Right, yeah.
And again, I don't recommend other people try it, but it's kind of strange because the Mindfulness app, I tend to think of it as guiding me, with that rhythm. But then you can get it in this mode where it'll follow your breath, and it's like, I'm just going to wait. Like, whenever you're ready, you go ahead. Like, I'm not going without you.
And then HealthKits on visionOS. This is kind of cool. What third-party apps have you found that are integrating with this quite yet? I'm not sure what that's like at this point.
So the main visionOS one that I tried was CardioBot. It's a visionOS version. But I also tried out compatible apps that have HealthKit integration, and that worked as well. So if you have a favorite app on your iPad that is HealthKit enabled and it's compatible with visionOS, you can actually do it that way too. And that works great. So I think we kind of got hints that this was coming with the Mindfulness app, being able to sync over your mindful minutes. I don't know exactly what backdoor channel they were using for that with visionOS 1, but now it's available to third-party developers as well. It's a shame there's no health app on the Vision Pro.
Is there a third-party app that will just show you everything as a read app, or is that not a thing?
Well, I mean, there's apps that will kind of pull in different relevant data and show you. But I don't know that there's one. I haven't used any that's like just a dashboard.
Yeah, like is there like a health replacement app for iPad?
Yeah.
Like that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I need to check that out, because I guess that would be kind of the stand-in now until Apple decides to do the health app. But the other thing is probably syncing and making sure it's all synced across. Even with the first-party health app on the iPad, I found that data can be a little delayed at times.
Yeah.
Like if I mark my medications on the iPad, sometimes it doesn't show up on my phone for 30 minutes or so. So, but yeah, I need to look into that, because I haven't thought about, there's got to be some iPad apps that kind of put that data together, and that would be a good stand-in until Apple puts the health app and hopefully the fitness app on visionOS as well.
Yeah. It'd be super interesting if they did more with the bedtime thing on visionOS. Currently, you have focus modes, but they're just there. It'd be interesting with the bedtime one if it kind of did more to encourage you and, it's time for bed. Let's take this off. We know you're awake and watching YouTube at 2 a.m. Come on, guys.
Yeah, like you've got the timer when the Vision Pro's about to die, which I have now incurred a couple times since the last time we talked about it.
You have? Okay. Isn't that such a weird experience?
Oh, it's daunting. It's like there's nothing you can do.
You can't even plug in power to fix it.
No, it's done. It's like I'm turning off no matter what you do, so you need to get me off. And but if they could make that for bedtime, it's like, okay, your bedtime's in 30 seconds, and you're not gonna be able to see out of this thing, so you need to take it off.
Yeah, that countdown though is so weird. Like I plugged in power. No, we're shunned down.
Too late.
Too late.
It's like it's got just the tiniest bit of reserve power just to let you see long enough to take it off.
Yeah, exactly.
But it can't actually recover from that mode.
Yeah. And it takes a while after you plug it in to boot it back up. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a fun experience, but yeah, occasionally it's like, low 10%, no big deal. Then you forget. You're like in the middle of the movie and you forget. It's like, oh crap. Yeah.
I've only got 5 more minutes. I can do that before this thing runs out of power. No, you can't. You just plug it in. It's okay.
Yeah. And then developers can now set the position of new app windows when they appear. The previous system always opened windows directly in front of you. You'll notice this especially when you're on a shortcut. That's wherever you're looking, that shortcut window is going to pop out. So this is really nice. I hope developers really start to embrace this.
Yes, this would be great. This is kind of one of my other themes or wishes, takeaways from the review is better window management and multitasking. And this is a step in that direction, that every window doesn't have to spawn directly in front of you. And you can also spawn windows in relation to other windows, so to make sure they're not overlapping. And another cool thing with Windows this year for developers is you can replace one window with another. And, that's something you'll see on other systems where if you've got a loading screen or a pop-up, to give you some information, then it goes back away and shows you the main window again. So that's cool, not having to pop out a whole separate window for that sort of thing.
I would love the Apple TV app to add an option to open video in a new window versus just yanking me out into the movie. I'd love to browse and stuff while watching. That's an option.
Yeah, that would be nice. And also, if the TV app could hide itself when you're opening a third-party streaming app.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
When I open Disney Plus, I always have to go back to the TV app and close it. And it's like, I feel like we could work around this because you're doing this for me. But yeah, so windowing in visionOS and spatial computing, it's one of those things that right now it's just very much a recreation of what we've had on the desktop. And you can move them around in space, but it's not really been rethought in the sense of spatial computing. And I feel like there's a lot that could be done there.
Yeah. I still love that the Disney app doesn't know how to display ads at this time. It's great.
Yeah, let's keep that up.
Yeah. If other people didn't care, we'd probably just go totally ad supported because Hulu's in there now too. So what the heck? Another discovery here is as you move, so with 3D objects, as you move an object close to the level of a table or floor, it will snap to that surface with a nice little click sound, and you can slide around that surface. So you're able to do this with any 3D object from the apps that already exist for visionOS 1. Is that right?
So I don't know about as far as like volumes from third-party apps if they have to be updated to use these APIs, but any like UDZ file objects that you download from the internet or that you open up from the Files app, it gets this for free. And there's APIs for improving the spatial side of third-party apps as well to kind of integrate with these sorts of things. But it's very cool because when visionOS 1 was released, a lot of the things that you want to do with it is like placing, a little plant on a table or, putting something up against a wall, like a poster and hanging it there.
So the wall does work as well?
It doesn't yet.
Does not. Okay.
That's what I have to imagine is the next step. Right now it's horizontal planes.
Because that'll be so nice to decorate your room and all these posters,
Yeah, because what I would do with like Widgetsmith is get it as close as I could and then walk around and look from the side angle and see how close I got. And sometimes it was way off,
Gotcha, yeah.
But it's interesting because visionOS is doing room mapping. It's aware of the space around you and the planes, and it can even do slanted planes now. So I feel like they're building the blocks up towards full on just decorating your room and getting it equivalent in that way.
Imagine if visionOS could repaint or put wallpaper.
Yes.
That'd be so cool.
I mean, imagine, Lowe's has already gone in on Vision Pro. They do in-store stuff as far as decorating your kitchen and stuff. So yeah, imagine that, but doing it at home and seeing it in your space, that would be absolutely incredible. But the first step is just being able to place objects on horizontal planes. And so I've done this in the review. I did it with a little teacup. I put it next to my cup, and it looked really cool next to it. I mean, I thought they looked pretty great, and you can actually hear the sound in the review. You can hear that little click. It's very satisfying, and it like locks on and lets you move it horizontally. And then if you pull hard enough, it'll click away from it and snap off the grid. But it also works on the floor. I downloaded a giant slide, a kid's slide.
Oh, that's so cool.
And actually, it was way bigger than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be pretty small.
Yeah, that's pretty useful for the kids' toys, right? To see how big this thing you're ordering is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for furniture and anything you're going to put in your space, this is going to be really helpful for seeing how big it is. Again, like I thought it would fit fine in the space I was in, and I was barely able to squeeze it in. And then I'm walking around it, and I feel like I'm kind of edging around the wall, even though it's a virtual object. It was so solid there, it felt like it was in the room.
Yeah. Best Buy also has an app that you can view kind of their inventory of most of the things they sell in 3D, which is pretty cool. So you can like check out, here's this racing wheel for your PlayStation, how big this thing is, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's actually as I don't know, as silly as that like home shopping might seem as a use case. It's something that we've all run into. You buy the shelf and it's the wrong size for that corner of the room, and like, oh, I could have prevented this if I'd have just measured.
Oh, you might be able to sell your significant other on a bigger TV because you could actually show them, hey, this is what it'll look like in our space. That's not as big as you really think it is, right?
Yeah, or like have a demo video and give them just a taste of what it would be like, and then let them go back to the other one and just be disappointed for a while before they finally let you buy it.
Right. So any other visionOS 2 kind of thoughts before we move on to your final segment here of wishes for the future?
I think we covered it all pretty well. I guess the only other thing would be in the developer tools, there's also object tracking, which is kind of cool because it allows you to, the system can recognize an object. The example Apple gives is a globe, and then can create experiences around that, digital experiences like watching the rotation of the moon around the globe or like a satellite or something. And so...
Oh, so you could have a globe and then you rotate and the moon, a digital moon is like above it?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm imagining like a digital maybe encyclopedia app that just recognizes objects and you can tap on them and learn more about them.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, eventually as this type of computing becomes more and more common, you could buy a physical good that comes with that digital experience as well and kind of enhance it. I think that's really intriguing as a possibility, and it's built into visionOS 2. And then it also has room tracking, so the system can tell when you move from one room to the other. So you could actually have like an experience that is contained within a room, and when you leave and come back, it's there. That's pretty cool. So there's some neat little tools for developers that right now they're just concepts, right? That Apple has samples for, but I feel like over time they're opening up different kinds of experiences for visionOS that are going to be really neat.
Nice. And then shortcuts, we did not get any new actions this year for visionOS. Is that right?
Nothing that I've come across. It does get the new library that came to the iPad, which I find awesome. How it's more focused on the app that you're using and less focused on the different categories of actions. I think that's great. But shortcuts, it's still the iPad version and no new real system integrations there, which, of course, I'd love to see. It's gotten better since visionOS 1.0. visionOS 1.0 using shortcuts was a little bit of a nightmare with what it did to your windows and stuff like that. So it's gotten better, but nothing major in 2.0 that I've noticed.
Gotcha. So on to the future. visionOS 3, Apple, you could do a 2.5, improve multitasking. I really hope we get this. This is such a cool idea. A quick launcher or dock hidden behind a hand gesture. And, have Spotlight in there, maybe even that would be so cool. Like in the concept of a dock, there is no dock in visionOS. Let's have some kind of dock and make it, through a hand gesture be even cooler.
Yeah, and there have been apps that have tried to recreate a dock or a status bar. The problem with those, in my eyes, is that they're persistent, and I don't want something that's persistent. I want something I can invoke easily system-wide. And so that's where Apple, as the creator of the system, can do something like they've done with the control center gesture and that little status bar you get there. If you could invoke a dock with, I don't know, turning your hand a different way, or I don't know. They're better at coming up with the gestures than I am, obviously. But I feel like there's room in the system for quick launching your most used and recent apps in a way that would translate from other systems, but again, be invoked in a way that fits with visionOS.
And then notifications. They're there. What thoughts do you have on notifications?
I think notifications are probably the weakest point of visionOS for me personally. The way they appear, first of all, it's just this little circle with the app icon, or a square if it's a compatible app. So you have no information of what is actually contained in it. There's no option to have a preview or anything like that, unless you tap on it to open the full-on notification center, which quickly becomes a nightmare because it's just a horizontally scrolling list of squares.
And then messages doesn't let you reply without leaving your fully immersive environment as a thing.
Yeah, the only option is to reply in messages. You can't reply in line. And I don't know, there's just notifications just doesn't feel fully baked in visionOS for me, and there hasn't been any change in visionOS 2. So which, we can give Apple a pass. It's a new platform. They're still building it. And that's one of the things I pointed out in the review as well, is that platforms take time and we're still seeing the building blocks here. But I feel like for it to be something that the general public's going to use and actually find useful, Notification Center is going to have a rethink and be not only easier to deal with notifications just on the fly, but also better organized when they're actually going into that notification center.
And then this paragraph I just love. Core experiences reimagined for spatial computing. Once all of Apple's apps are running natively on visionOS, it'll be time to start rethinking many of them in light of what Vision Pro can do. Spatial computing is in a way of interacting with software, so every system app shouldn't be limited to flat rectangles that came before. How about a 3D virtual desk calendar showing your events for the day, or a virtual recreation of the book you're reading that you can hold in your hands, an envelope to fold your email into before sending it. The possibilities are endless in visionOS. I'd like to think Apple think outside the literal box. And that's just, I love that. Let's have more of this fun, wacky stuff.
Now, the email one was a joke. I don't want to actually...
I mean, that'd be wild. I
guess for certain people.
I mean, maybe you hit send and it comes out and folds up and...
Yeah, I guess a little animation would be cool, but I want to deal with email as little as possible. But yeah, give me a typewriter to pretend to type on as I'm, writing my visionOS 3 review, and I think the reading experience on visionOS could be really enhanced by some rethinking in terms of spatial, because holding your head straight up and looking at this window floating in front of you, that's something that I feel like could be reimagined. And I feel like what Apple's doing again is they're still working on the fundamentals, and once the fundamentals are set, then it's time to really start thinking creatively about just getting weird and reimagining what these things could be. So it's encouraging to see the changes in visionOS 2 in terms of getting the basics right. But I'd love to see some weirdness, some just complete reimagining, and trying something completely new as well there.
Yeah. The Apple Books team could have fun with their app, I feel.
Oh yeah. That would be really interesting, and I think you'd probably have to give people the option to revert back, because some of those behaviors are so ingrained, and some people maybe don't want that. But I personally, as a fan of the platform and a fan of the paradigm and what it could be, I just want to see those concepts pushed as far as they can go.
Yeah. And then, as you point out, still no way to upgrade your 2D movies to 3D if they were imported from Movies Anywhere or other storefronts, which very sad that is. You have to repurchase those, which I've done a couple times when they go on sale for $5. Yeah,
and it's one of those things that it's been an issue with 4K movies in the past too, but there's kind of workarounds. I figured out Sigmund told me a way to upgrade my copy of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, my favorite film, to 4K through the Vudu store. But I don't think doing that with 3D titles works the same way yet. So, 3D is one of those things. People love watching 3D movies on Vision Pro. It's this like very particular use case. It's a selling point, and making that as easy for people to access as possible through the upgrade system, I think it makes a lot of sense, and hopefully we'll see it.
Sure would be cool if iOS and iPadOS could tell you if a movie's in 3D. Like, you're in the TV app, it's in 4K HDR. It's like, it'd be nice if the 3D tag was there with the Apple Vision Pro, and like it's like a reminder, hey, if you got an Apple Vision Pro, you can watch this in 3D as well, but it's just hidden unless you're on Vision Pro.
Yeah, it's a selling point, and it's another example of Apple being actually really generous with the new titles that you're buying, in that it's not an upgrade on top of, buying the title. It's just included, and I could imagine.
And they'll upgrade some titles that are old for free, sometimes.
Yeah. I appreciate when Apple does that with these new technologies. They did it with 4K, kind of just making it really easy to get aspects of your library into it. But then there's always these little holes that don't get plugged and we'd like to see done.
Yeah. And the weird trend I've noticed is movies in their first initial release after theaters that are like $30 or whatever, they'll be in 2D. And then once they come down in price and it's in wide digital release for like $20 and they hit the streamers and stuff, then they enable 3D. So this happened with Godzilla, the Kong movie that came out initially just 2D, and then like a month and a half, 2 months later, it's out in 3D now that it's cheaper. And same thing with Inside Out 2 is out for $30 in 2D, and then once it hit Disney Plus and came down in price, it's now in 3D, which is such a weird thing that you'd think like for $30 they'd sell you the fully best version, but no, they wait.
Yeah, you have to like buy it trusting
that
that 3D version is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I guess if you're watching it day one, then you're not getting that 3D version as well. So.
Yeah, so I waited on Inside Out 2. I was like, I might have bought it for 30, but no, I'll just wait. Because it's funny, the Disney Plus app, it said streaming in 3D before it was even streaming. It was like if you pull up the listing in Disney Plus app, like the week or two before it was out in Disney Plus, it said streaming in 3D. It's like, okay. Sure.
So it's coming.
It's coming, yeah. And then the IMAX app I noticed is starting to have some 3D trailers, which is kind of fun. There's a Marvel's trailer that's in 3D in IMAX, which is fun.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hadn't seen that. I
think it's the new Captain America movie. There's the trailer that's in 3D there, which is cool.
Oh, yeah. I need to watch that. So, yeah, I feel like 3D content was one of those things that we didn't really talk about before Vision Pro. I mean, there were some people who were doing it on PSVR or MetaQuest, but I feel like personally, I hadn't heard much about 3D content until the Vision Pro, and now it's kind of come back around that it's something that people are interested in again.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for Disney to release Prometheus, which was filmed in 3D and is out on Blu-ray 3D, to release that in 3D on Disney Plus and on Apple TV, but not yet. It's so disappointing. Like, come on, guys. Alien Romulus just hit, big success. Hopefully when that comes to Disney Plus, they can do a big Prometheus in 3D now. I don't know. We'll see. Well, any final thoughts? Anything else?
I'll just say that, first of all, appreciate everyone who did read the review and took the time to send nice comments. That was very much appreciated. It's my first time doing a project like this, and it was awesome. It was a really great experience. I also, anytime I talk about visionOS 2, I want to take a moment to recognize the work of the visionOS team at Apple and the incredible things that they're doing, creating a new paradigm for computing and, bringing us all into this world of spatial computing and figuring out what it all is going to look like. It's a big task to take on, and I feel like they're doing a great job. This update, for me personally, it's been a huge change day to day. And I feel like there's some real foundation setting here that is happening that may not feel like such a big deal now, but in the future, we're just going to assume these things are a part of our computers, and we're not going to remember that it was added in visionOS 2 and nobody really thought about it. So it's cool to see this platform developing and kind of seeing what it's going to become. And of course, talking with people like you about what we'd like to see it become and keeping our fingers crossed that some of those things will come true. But I am more positive on visionOS now than I even was before visionOS 2 was announced, and I'm very, very excited about the platform and where it's going.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, likewise, very excited for visionOS 3 and beyond, and see what little features they add over time. And I will see if I'm so curious when the M5 Vision Pro comes out, how hard that'll be to resist, or if I may skip out on that upgrade depending on trade-in values,
Oh, I don't even want to think about trade-in for
I know, right? Like, oh gosh, so expensive. Like, if trade-in values aren't amazing, then it'll be harder to find that upgrade money, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long road. We're in very early days, and another thing I pointed out in the review is that the hardware that we have now is the heaviest and least comfortable that it's ever going to be.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that continues. But it's going to be a journey. But I'm really excited to be on the ground floor and see where it goes.
Yeah, as the reviews hit for iOS 18. It finally hit me. It didn't hit me last year. 17 is a big number. 18, that means I've installed every one of those as an adult, because iPhone 1 hit when I was a freshman in college. So that means an entire person has become of age since I've been in college. That is terrifying.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of math you don't want to think about.
No. And yeah, visionOS will eventually hit 18, and oh boy, will I feel old when that happens, because man. Yeah.
Thankfully, we've got a long ways to go there, and
we do.
And, lots of fun to have in between.
We do, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Devon, for your time. It's been great chatting and diving more into your review.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Well, that's my discussion with Devon all about visionOS 2. Make sure to check out Devon's review over at MacStories.net. It is a great read and very in-depth about all the updates included in visionOS 2. My thanks again to Devon for his time recording. My thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. As a reminder, you can support this podcast over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. And by subscribing to either the Patreon or an Apple Podcast, you'll get episodes early of both iPad Pros and Vision Pros. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.